7 nannies ruined their chance with a Millionaire's twins until one surprising hero appeared. The sun hung low over the opulent mansion, casting long shadows that danced on the perfectly manicured lawn. Inside, the atmosphere buzzed with tension and unspoken secrets. 7 nannies, each with their own dream of securing a future with the billionaire's twins, stood at a crossroads of desperation. They were skilled, but luck had evidently turned its back. James Hawthorne, a man of immense wealth and even greater expectations, needed someone extraordinary to manage his children. But each nanny regardless of talent had faced a peculiar downfall. The first nanny, a yoga enthusiast with a penchant for granola bars, had vanished after an ominous midnight shout echoed through the halls, something about a haunted doll, or so the rumors claimed. The second, a bubbly college student, had simply disappeared into thin air on a foggy Thursday, leaving behind only her half-eaten sandwich and a trail of mystery. Each one of them, a piece of a bizarre puzzle, each story more chilling than the last. Whispers filled the halls. "Did you hear about the helper who found a hidden door in the cellar?" Someone gasped, eyes glinting with fear and excitement. "They say it leads to an underground tunnel beneath the mansion." The nannies exchanged glances. Was the mansion cursed? Each unsettling tale they heard pulled them deeper into a web of suspense that wrapped around them like a vice. Strange noises echoed through the night, muffled cries, soft footsteps that seemed to brush against the walls, and a shadow flitting just out of sight. Could it really be that the past was haunting them? The once glamorous house now felt more like a trap, alive with its own heartbeat, and danger lingered in the very air they breathed. Just as the tension reached a fever pitch, a newcomer stepped into the bizarre scene, a third cousin, twice removed, who had wandered in on the family vacation with a wild story of her own. Melina's entrance was as unyielding as a clap of thunder. She carried an air of mystery, along with an antiquated map that hinted at untold treasures and, perhaps, secrets that could put every ghost story to shame. "You think they were just unlucky?" she teased with a knowing smile, hardly fazed by their fear. "I think they were hiding something, and it might just change everything." Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. With an explosive click, Melina opened the dusty old map on the table, revealing dark markings and cryptic swirlings reminiscent of an ancient tale, pointing towards a hidden corner of Hawthorne Heights that no one had ventured into yet. The nannies leaned in, their hearts racing. A flicker of hope punctured through the anxiety, a chance to take back their fate. But as whispers of the mansion's darker past filled the air, what lay ahead seemed more terrifying than they ever imagined. Would they dare explore it, and what might they find if they did? The air in the room transformed, thick with disbelief and trepidation as the map unfurled under the dim light. Details swirled beneath Melina's fingers like an ancient curse, tantalizing yet alarming. The nannies hovered closer, straining their eyes to make sense of the markings. Each one held her breath, fear grappling with curiosity. "What if it's a trap?" whispered Lena, a seasoned caregiver whose nerves were already frayed. Her voice trembled, every syllable dripping with ominous weight. Melina shrugged, a sly grin crossing her lips. "Or maybe, it's a way to uncover the truth. Secrets have a way of lurking in the dark. And this mansion?" She waved her hand, clocking how every nook held its own sordid history. "It's brimming with them." A chill swept through the room. The windows rattled as the wind picked up outside, casting dancing shadows on the walls, the architectural bones of the mansion groaning like a living creature in pain. Who had come before them? Who had wandered in these halls, chasing the same dream only to vanish or flee? Just then, the door creaked open, and a flicker of movement caught their attention. A tall silhouette loomed in the entrance, cloaked in shadow. The nannies gasped collectively, hearts racing, fists clenching. Melina turned sharply, her smirk faltering. "James." The voice came, smooth but laced with authority. It was him, the billionaire himself. James Hawthorne had entered the fray, and the temperature dropped instantly. "What in the hell is going on here?" he asked sharply, stepping into the light. His dark hair gleamed like polished onyx, eyes sharp as frozen steel. He surveyed the map, taking stock of the 7 frightened faces flickering with anxiety. One of the nannies stammered, We found this map. We were thinking maybe it leads to something." James' brow furrowed. "You're thinking. Do you have any idea what you could be unleashing?" The weight of his words loomed large, a cold reminder of those who came before them. Laughter bounced off the walls, hollow and nervous. "Unleashing what? Ghosts? Specters? A hungry curse?" Melina challenged, not backing down. Maybe it was foolish bravado, or maybe it was merely the thrill of danger clawing at her. "I'll tell you what haunts these walls," he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. "There's a reason why the previous nannies fled, and it wasn't just the children. Something has been buried in this mansion, something that none of you could fathom. And this map? It may just lead to it." The nannies exchanged uncertain glances, terror wavering between them. Was it foolish to dig deeper, to probe where the last 7 had feared to tread? "I say we go for it," Melina said, her voice crackling with determination. "What's the worst that could happen? We uncover a secret or we leave empty-handed. With the truth, at least, we can finally escape this nightmare for good." "Imagine finding out what really happened," one of the nannies murmured, eyes wide with the possibility. "Or losing more than we bargained for," James interjected, as the tension prickled through the room. Silence enveloped them, thick enough to suffocate. But just as warmth seemed to seep back into the air, a loud crash echoed from the direction of the cellar. The floor beneath them shuddered, and a faint, pitiful cry reached their ears, a child's voice, lost and echoing, pleading desperately for help. With fear sowing its seeds, a chilling thought pierced through the assembly: what if it wasn't just the mansion that was haunted, but perhaps, something deeper? Can they really take the leap into the unknown? As the echo rang out, they were a breath away from making a decision that would change everything forever. Would they follow the whispers below or turn back to face the fading hopes haunting their hearts? The floor shook again beneath them, a tremor that seemed to vibrate in their bones. The child's cry echoed louder, each plea tinging the air with a sense of dread. Melina's breath quickened, her heart pounded fiercely against her rib cage. The mansion felt alive, every creak and shadow biting at their resolve. "What was that?" Lena whispered, her voice barely a thread. "I don't know, but we can't just stand here." Melina shouted, adrenaline fueling her courage. "We have to check it out." "Perhaps we should," one of the nannies started, but Melina shot her a look that silenced the protest. James took a step forward, his features hardening. "You don't know what's down there. It could be dangerous. Or it could be a child," Melina insisted, moving toward the cellar door that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. "We can't turn our backs on someone who needs help. Are you with me?" A wave of tension erupted in the room, the kind that wrapped around them and squeezed. The nannies exchanged glances filled with uncertainty, but one by one, they nodded. The thought of leaving a child in that darkness was unbearable. "Fine," James agreed reluctantly. "But we go together. No one gets left behind." The group formed a tight circle as they approached the narrow steps leading to the cellar. The air grew colder, a chilling breath that wrapped around their legs like an unseen predator. Melina flicked her flashlight on, its beam slicing through the gloom, illuminating the worn stone steps. Each step creaked ominously beneath their weight, as if the mansion were warning them to turn back. Their hearts raced as they descended. The musty smell of damp earth mixed with the scent of something sharper, something metallic. They reached the bottom, the flashlight beam uncovering a vast room, cluttered with broken crates and old furniture, a dumping ground of forgotten secrets. Then, it hit them, a desolate, cracked wall, and in its shadow, a door barely ajar. The sound pierced the silence again, a whimper, almost drowned by a heavy echo. A small hand, pale and trembling, peeked from the darkness beyond the door. "Help!" The voice cried again, raw and desperate. A spotlight of fear burned in Melina's chest. "What do you want?" she called out, trying to sound braver than she felt. I'm lost." The voice faltered, fear clawing through every syllable. "Please, don't leave me." The nannies gasped collectively, realization dawned. "Stella!" one of them exclaimed. "That's one of the twins." "Stay back," James commanded, stepping protectively in front of the group as Melina instinctively moved forward. The dirt-streaked wall had cracks splitting like scars, each fissure whispering of long-buried truths. "Stella, we're here," Melina shouted, reaching for the handle. "Just hold on." But before she could turn it, another crash echoed overhead, shaking the entire mansion, and dust rained down like fallen ash. The tremor knocked them off balance, and panic spread like wildfire. "Something's wrong," one of the nannies screamed, stumbling backward. "We need to get out." "No," James barked, eyes flickering with a mix of fear and defiance. "We can't leave. We have to save her." And that's when the ground shook violently again. The walls seemed to pulse, the house letting out a groan that felt like a warning, a living monster protesting its trespassers. As the door creaked open a fraction wider, a chilling thought clawed at Melina's mind: what if rescuing Stella meant unleashing the very darkness that haunted this mansion? The room spun with uncertainty and fear, leaving them at a crossroads: face the unknown or flee back into the comforting grasp of ignorance. "Stay or run," she whispered, chewing her lip as tension surged through the room. In that moment, just as uncertainty weighed heavy in the air, another wail echoed, and something shifted. A shadow flitted near the back of the room, distant but there. A flash of white in the corner of Melina's eye sent a chill down her spine. "Did you see that?" she breathed, eyes wide with fear. What was lurking in the dark that they hadn't recognized yet? The answer was coming, and it would change everything. Fear hung thick in the air as Melina's eyes darted toward the corner where the shadow had flickered. The flashlight beam wavered, revealing nothing more than dust and debris, yet every inch of her skin prickled with an instinctual warning. "Did you see something?" she repeated, her voice trembling. I don't know what I saw," James snapped, frustration creeping into his tone. "But it feels wrong down here. We shouldn't be here at all." Melina swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the unknown press against her chest. The crying continued, pulling at her heart like a child's grip. "We can't leave her," she insisted, shaking off his fears. "Stella needs us." But as she reached for the door handle, a sudden rush of air swept through the cellar, hitting them with a bone-chilling blast. What was left of their courage seemed to disperse into the darkness. The whispering walls tightened their grip around the group, and Melina's hand hovered, quivering just inches from the cold metal. "Open the door," one of the nannies shouted, desperate but terrified. Melina could see the wild fear in their eyes. They all felt that the mansion was alive in a way that strayed into the sinister. Just as Melina summoned the courage to twist the handle, a loud crash resonated from the floor above, followed by a series of loud thuds, like something heavy was being dragged across the floor. Dust rained down again, mingling with the sudden surge of panic that made them want to flee. "Whatever is up there might come down here," one of the nannies screamed, shifting uncertainly. "Shut up. Focus," James growled, stepping closer to Melina, urgency etched on his face. "We have to make a decision. Right now." The crying intensified, a raw, heart-wrenching sound that filled the void of fear, almost challenging them to act. "Stella!" Melina yelled into the dark. "We're coming to get you. Just hold on." Suddenly, the door swung open completely, as if inviting them into the abyss. An unbearable stillness settled in the room, where shadows morphed into monstrous shapes. Melina's heart thundered as she took a cautious step forward, her instinct screaming at her to run, but the flashlight flickered, dimming before the light surrendered to darkness, plunging them into a shadowy void. "I can't see," Lena gasped, stumbling against one of the crates. A collective gasp filled the air as they all fought to stay close, desperation pushing them together. "Stay together." James growled again, his voice a firm anchor amidst the chaos. Melina pushed herself through the door, feeling it give a little under her weight. The wailing had stopped suddenly, replaced by a haunting silence that gnawed at her insides, twisting her stomach into knots. "Stella?" she called again, her voice trembling. "Are you in here?" A faint rustle broke through the oppressive quiet. In that moment, something shifted in the shadows, a shape coalescing into being. It hovered near an old armchair, draped in moth-eaten fabric. Melina squinted into the gloom, her breath hitching at what she saw. Her heart dropped into her stomach. It wasn't Stella. From the darkness came a pair of eyes, reflective and wide, filled with terror. But there was nothing childlike about them. They glowed, flickering like embers, hinting at something profoundly wrong, something ancient that should never have awakened. The nannies clung to one another as a cold realization broke over them: they weren't alone. "Get back!" James shouted, but the voice came from Melina's lips. "Everyone, stay!" Before they could react, the figure lunged. It moved with a speed that defied reason, an echo of the darkness itself, closing the distance in swift strides. "Run!" Melina shouted, adrenaline igniting her limbs. But what was behind her demanded her attention. Every heartbeat was a countdown, each breath a desperate prayer. What had they awakened in the shadows? And was it too late to save Stella or themselves? Melina turned to sprint down the corridor, heart racing. She could feel the air shift behind her, a malevolent presence gaining momentum. "This way! Follow me!" she shouted, desperation lacing her voice. The nannies, fear etched on their faces, stumbled after her, clinging to each other like the last vestiges of safety. James was close behind, urging them on. "Keep moving. Don't stop." His voice cut through the thick fog of terror strangling the air. They plunged into another room, hastily pushing the door shut. It creaked ominously, a reluctant barrier between them and the shadows that lurked in the unknown. Breaths came quick and shallow as Melina's hand trembled, struggling to find the latch. The floorboards squeaked underfoot, echoing like warning bells to whatever was hunting them. "Are we safe?" one of the nannies panted, her eyes wide in horror. Melina nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at her. "For now, but we need a plan." She turned, trying to scan the dim room, but the faint sliver of moonlight barely illuminated the contours of the walls around them. There was a musty smell, a faded scent of time long forgotten, and somewhere deep inside, the sensation of being watched lingered like a shadow. The silence shattered as a loud crash echoed from the cellar, rattling the room. "What is that?" another nanny screamed, clutching her arms as if to shield herself from an invisible threat. "Something is coming," Melina whispered, each word thick with dread. She had to find a way to fight back. "We can't just wait here. We need to find Stella and leave." "Are you crazy?" James interjected, fear straining his voice. "We don't even know what that thing is." Something moved beyond the door, a soft rustle that morphed into guttural whispers. Melina's heart pounded in synchrony with the rising tension. "Listen, we can't let fear control us. We must be brave. Stella is somewhere in this house, and if we wait too long." A sudden thrumming thud reverberated through the wood, and they all jolted as the knotted fibers of the door trembled. The figures in the shadows were alive, prowling, searching. She felt the very door quiver against the pushing force, threatening to splinter. "Now! Let us go!" she yelled, the instinct for survival driving her forward. She thrust the door open, and an icy gust surged in, snaking around their ankles as they spilled into the hallway once more. "Where next?" James asked, his voice filled with panic as the shadows slithered at the edges of their vision. Melina's mind raced, a million questions flooded in. The attic. We can find a way out from there. They darted down the hall, their footsteps pounding furiously against the floor, each thud a plea for safety. The whispers grew louder, sharper, echoing with venomous laughter. It felt like they were being dragged into a nightmare, struggling against a current of malevolence that seemed to want to swallow them whole. As they reached the stairs leading to the attic, Melina glanced back, her pulse hammering in her ears. The figure was there, lurking just out of reach, eyes flickering in the dim light like death's own glint. Go. Now. Melina screamed, shoving the first nanny up the stairs. We can't let it catch us. They climbed rapidly, the staircase creaking under their weight. Melina felt the dark energy pressing behind them, a weight that followed like a beast hunting its prey. Just as they reached the top step, James turned, eyes wild. What if Stella isn't up here? Then we make noise, Melina gasped. We have to draw it away, give Stella a chance. The attic door loomed ahead, a heavy barricade against the horrors below. With a swift crack of the hinges, Melina shoved the door open and stepped into the vast emptiness of the attic. The air was thick with dust and decades of neglect, the pale moonlight peering through cracked windows like weak fingers grasping for hope. Before she could catch her breath, a spine-chilling scream pierced through the night, the unmistakable sound of a child in terror. No. Stella. Melina gasped, eyes wide with horror. Where was she? The figure they had escaped now loomed at the foot of the stairs, shrouded in shadows, a malevolent force preparing to strike. Get back! James shouted, recruiting his fists for a fight. But the panic in Melina's chest pressed hard as she glanced around. What if this attic held the answers or the end? In that moment of desperate clarity, she knew time was running out, but a glimmer of light flickered in the far corner. Could it lead them to Stella? Or was it another snare set by the darkness? The answer lay ahead. Would they have the courage to face it? The attic was a labyrinth of shadows and memories, dust motes swirling like tiny ghosts in the pale moonlight. Melina blinked against the darkness, straining to hear Stella's voice over the pounding in her ears. It seemed to reverberate around the cramped space, bouncing off the faded, forgotten furniture up against the sloped ceiling. Stella. Melina's throat tightened, fear coiling inside her as the chilling echoes faded into silence. She forced her gaze around, searching for the source of the sound that pierced her heart like a dagger. Where could she be? James whispered, panic tinging his voice. The other nannies stood clustered together, their eyes wide and terrified. This isn't safe. We should stayed below. No. Melina shot back, frustration igniting within her. If we don't find her, she won't be safe at all. A scratching noise at the far side of the attic made her jump, and she instinctively stepped closer to James, who didn't seem much braver himself. They both hesitated, then slowly turned to face the sound. A small pile of forgotten boxes teetered precariously, a light breeze causing them to shift and groan. The flicker in the corner beckoned her the glimmer that felt like hope, but could so easily lead to ruin. I'll check it out, Melina said, her voice steadier than she felt. Stay close. James nodded, his eyes darting nervously toward the door they'd come through, still shrouded in darkness. The chilling feeling of being hunted hung heavy in the air as Melina edged toward the glimmering light. She felt the floor beneath her shift. A soft creaking sound whispered like promises of entrapment. Boxes loomed in her path, casting long shadows. Holding her breath, she squeezed through the narrow space, focused solely on that light which now pulsed softly against the attic's gloom. Suddenly, a hand shot from behind a box, grasping her wrist. Heart leaping, she spun around, ready to scream. It was just a child, a small girl with wide tear-filled eyes and hair as wild as the wind. Stella. Melina gasped, kneeling before her. Oh, thank God. Help. Stella whimpered, her voice barely above a whisper. It's coming. It wants me. I know, Melina said urgently. She could sense them all, dark figures here or there, laughter echoing outside their vision. We have to get out of here. Stay close to me. Stella nodded, and just then, the shadowy presence at the bottom of the stairs shifted. Melina glanced back to see a darker shape emerging, filling the doorway in a way that seemed to absorb the very light in the room. It loomed, a grotesque parody of a human form, letting out a low, guttural growl that reverberated in her bones. Run! Melina shouted. She grabbed Stella's tiny hand, a fragile lifeline, and sprinted toward the farthest corner of the attic. Panic surged in her chest as her feet pounded against the old wooden floor, but something seemed to snag the air around them, like the house was closing in, getting heavier with every frantic step. Melina! James yelled, his voice laced with dread as he rushed after them. But even as he moved, the figure was pressing through the door. Shadows stretched as if reaching for him, trailing like fingers hungry for warmth. Hide! Melina screamed, dragging Stella toward a half-open flap in the attic wall, used for storage, a hidden compartment. They pressed inside just as the figure crested the top step. They huddled together, almost suffocating in the cramped space, and Melina gripped Stella tighter, the sound of their breaths muffled by the weight of the fear that hung thick. I can't stay in here, Stella whimpered, eyes darting. Just a moment, Melina whispered fiercely, hoping against hope it was all they needed. But then came the sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoing through the attic. The shadow loomed, searching, and Melina's heart dipped into her stomach as she realized they'd soon be found. A sudden crash echoed, the shape outside scrambling, and all the air rushed out of the room. Melina held her breath, steeling herself against the icy fear winding into her veins. Don't move. She warned, her voice barely above a breath. But would they be trapped forever in this tiny space? And would they ever escape the terror that had come for them? With dread pooling in her stomach, Melina steeled herself, knowing the next moments could change everything. What would they face, once the dust settled? Would the figure find them, or could they somehow slip away into the night? The footsteps grew louder, each crunch resonating like an ominous drumbeat. Melina's heart raced. She could hear the heavy movements of the looming figure just outside the compartment, its presence turning the stale air into something suffocating. Stay quiet, Melina murmured, her own voice trembling despite her efforts to remain calm. Stella nodded, pressing her small body against Melina, eyes darting around the confined space as if seeking an escape from the madness above them. The shadow at the attic's entrance loomed larger as it inspected the area, a dark figure that swallowed every flicker of hope and light. Melina could barely see the shape, but she imagined its jagged edges and hollow eyes staring into the very soul of fear. She felt every heartbeat accumulate in the space, a cacophony of terror beating along with her racing pulse. Suddenly, the figure paused, and her breath caught. It had sensed them. Melina could feel its gaze probing, searching for the slightest hint of movement. Staying perfectly still felt impossible, but she knew any sound could betray them. Please, Stella whispered, her voice breaking, a tiny plea that cut through Melina like a knife. But Melina had no words to comfort her. Instead, she closed her eyes, willing the uneasiness to disappear, wishing that the very fabric of the attic would shift and hide them deeper inside the shadows. The figure stepped closer, and Melina could hear its sharp, ragged breath, the rhythm of panic echoing back at her. In a moment of unimaginable dread, the shadowed form turned, surveying the attic once more. Then, with a low growl that sent chills spiraling down Melina's spine, it moved away toward another corner, perhaps sensing the new sounds emanating from the tumult of other nannies below. James. Melina had almost forgotten him, the realization striking her with renewed panic. Could he still be out there? Was he safe? Stay here. Melina hissed to Stella, reluctantly inching out of their tight hiding place. With each step, splinters of fear shot through her, the attic enveloped her like a storm cloud. Every creak of the wooden floorboards threatened betrayal. Peeking out from their pocket of safety, she searched for signs of James, the other nannies, anything that could indicate their whereabouts. The attic now felt like a different world. Wooden beams loomed high, dust streaming through fractured sunlight that burned as it illuminated the chaos of forgotten antiques scattered around like ghosts of the past yearning for remembrance. She could hear whispers below, muffled fears creeping up, and it reminded her just how fragile life could be. Then she saw him. James crouched in the other corner, his face pale, fingers twitching with anxiety. But he wasn't alone. Another nanny was with him, her expression wild and frightened, darting glances around the attic, oblivious to the looming threat that had crept back toward them. "James!" Melina whispered sharply, drawing his gaze. But as soon as he turned, the shadow returned, towering above them, its growl deepening, filled with hunger. The figure twisted towards Melina, eyes void of compassion, a predator locking onto its prey. "No!" Melina gasped, adrenaline surging through her veins. She had to warn them, to save them. But before she could shout, the shadow lunged forward with a speed unlike anything she could fathom. "Get down!" Melina screamed, her voice raw and desperate. The attic erupted into chaos as James and the other nanny dove aside. Melina grabbed Stella's hand, ready to bolt towards the only exit she could see. The descending stairs that had so often felt a burden now appeared to be their only salvation. The walls closed in, and everything narrowed to a single point of urgency. They were running now, faster than Melina had ever known she could. Heart pounding, footsteps racing, their collective breaths mingled with fear, with a singular mission to survive. The shadow screamed, a sound that sent icy fingers trailing down Melina's spine. As they thundered toward the stairs, she dared a glance back at the monstrous figure, only to feel a new weight crashing into her chest. The darkness outside the light seemed to multiply, and she realized the terror was far from over. What if more shadows waited beyond the attic, ready to take their chance? What if this was only the beginning of something much worse? With the darkness rising, one question burned in Melina's thoughts: what would it take to finally escape this nightmare? Melina's heart hammered against her ribs as they sprinted toward the stairs, each footfall resonating in her ears like a countdown. Beneath her feet, the wooden boards creaked, a symphony of warnings that almost drowned out the growls of the shadow behind them. She could feel its malevolence creeping up behind her, a pulse of dread tangible in the air. "Faster!" she urged, barely sparing a glance to check if James and the other nanny were following. She sensed Stella's grip tightening around her hand, tiny fingers shaking with fear as they galloped closer to the edge of escape. Then, like a burst of black smoke, the figure lunged toward them again. A low snarl echoed, chilling her to the bone. Instinct kicked in, Melina yanked Stella around a corner, barely avoiding the monster's reach. The air crackled with danger, the very essence of life thickening with dread and uncertainty. "Keep going. Don't look back," Melina called out, urging Stella forward as she strained for the stairs just ahead. Suddenly, James collided into her from the other side, panic etched across his face. "What the hell is that thing?" he gasped, eyes wide, reflecting raw terror. "Just move," she barked back, barely able to contain her own fear as the shadows flickered menacingly. The stairs loomed ahead, a beacon of potential safety. Melina's breath was a hard knot in her throat as they reached the first step. But the instant they did, the world tilted. From the shadows above, something else shifted, a flicker of movement that felt almost protective. "Go! Now!" the other nanny shouted, shoving past James. Melina felt a rush of anger at the woman's reckless disregard, but before she could retaliate, the shadow surged forward again, claws glinting in the dim light. The sheer size of it was breathtaking. A momentary, horrifying glimpse of its jagged teeth left her frozen in fear. "Move!" James yelled at Melina. His eyes were wild, pulling her back to the moment and the urgency of escape. Melina ripped her eyes away from the malevolence, shoving Stella ahead. They stumbled down the stairs, the narrow space alive with echoing footsteps. Adrenaline surged, but fatigue clawed at them too, making every step feel heavier than the last. "Where are the others?" Melina's voice trembled as she forced the question out. Voices whispered below, but the one voice she needed to hear was missing. What if any of the other nannies had made it out? What if they were lost in the shadows? They reached the bottom of the stairs, and the outside world taunted them with its calls of safety. Melina could see the sliver of light cutting through the dusty interior. But she could also hear it rustling, the telltale sound of presence behind them, growing closer. As they reached the last step, James fell forward, hazel eyes wide with disbelief. No. This can't be happening. Melina hurled herself past him, fingers fumbling at the door handle. It was frozen, stuck tight with age. Desperation surged within her. The shadow's growl echoed louder now, a bellow of rage, not hunger. Come on. Work. She shouted, wrenching at the handle, twisting and yanking, her muscles screaming for release from the grip of panic. Just as her fingers began to slip, the door creaked. A crack split open, slicing through the shadows like a knife. Freedom lay inches away, but she knew there was still a distance to cover before safety was theirs. Please no. James' voice trembled, but Melina wouldn't allow his fear to drag her under. With a final surge, she flung the door wide open. Bright light flooded in, blinding them momentarily. It felt like a promise, a fragile thread of hope. But as they stumbled through, Melina's heart dropped. On the other side, the yard was empty, not a soul in sight, just the chilling rustle of the wind. Where do we go now? Stella cried, shaking as panic threatened to spill over again. Before Melina could answer, a shout rang out behind them, a voice that wasn't theirs, echoing through the tension that had settled. We have to get back. Another nanny called urgently from the attic. But what could they do? Shadows loomed large once more, both behind and ahead, and now they were faced with a decision: what would lead them to safety? The darkness surged around them, and Melina's instinct screeched within her. Was it too late to turn back? What if the real terror still lurked in wait, and they were merely pawns in a deeper game? With the cold air thick with uncertainty, despair creeping into her thoughts, one question sharpened within Melina: the worst possible thought. What if the worst was yet to come? The moment hung in the air, heavy with dread. Melina's heartbeat quickened as she glanced back at the door they had just escaped. It towered over them like a malevolent sentinel. She could hear the angry growls now, louder and more insistent, as if the dark thing had found new strength, empowered by their flight. Keep running. James shouted, pulling Stella along as they tore across the yard, ignoring the gravel biting at their bare feet and the branches that clawed at their clothes. Melina's breath was ragged, her mind racing to find a way out. There's a gate at the end. She yelled, pointing toward the far side of the yard where a rusted, wrought iron gate stood sentinel against the encroaching darkness. The wind howled, carrying with it a sense of cold dread. Fear seeped into her bones, but she pushed it down. She had to focus. Just a little further. She urging Stella onward. We can get through. As they hurtled across the yard, a sudden crash echoed from the attic. Melina hesitated, torn between the instinct to save the others and the stark reality that time was slipping away like sand through her fingers. James, should we go back? She panted, her voice trembling. No. We can't. We need to leave. He insisted, eyes darting nervously. The enormity of their situation loomed larger than ever, shadows creeping closer, trying to swallow them whole. Each step felt like a gamble against the looming darkness. They reached the gate, but it stood stubbornly shut, rusted and unyielding. Melina gripped the gate's edges and pulled, desperately trying to shake it loose. Come on. She urged it, her bravery rooted in panic. Stella's whimper pierced through her resolve, and she turned to see the girl's face pale with terror. It won't open, Melina. Just a second. She twisted and jerked at the rusted latch, but it wouldn't budge. Behind them, the shadows roared, their ghastly form churning like a storm poised for destruction. We need to go. James cried out again, fear creeping into his voice. We're running out of time. That angered denial flickered inside her. No. We can't just leave them. What if they're still in there? Suddenly, a soft creaking sound sent chills down her spine. They all froze as the sound echoed through the night, familiar, haunting. It was the attic door, swinging wide open, revealing a figure cloaked in shadows. "Help!" A voice called out from above, barely ounces from despair. Melina's gut twisted. "Someone's still up there." "Yeah, but you'll be trapped too if you don't move." James yelled that. In that moment of confusion, the shadow surged forward again, this time merging with the figure from above. It all happened in an instant, a flash of darkness, then a combination of fear and something else rising in Melina, hope. "I'll get her." The other Nanny's voice rang clear, firm in its resolve. Somehow, she had gathered the strength to face the shadow head-on. Just as Melina turned to shout a warning, the margin of doom shifted dramatically. The figure in the attic dove forward, arms outstretched, and vanished into the darkness. "No! Stop!" Melina shouted, horrified. The world felt like it was closing in on her, an unbearable weight. James seized her arm, yanking her back. "We can't wait. We have to go." But Melina shook her head, caught in the swell of disbelief. "What if we leave them to die?" As shadows twisted, closing the space between them, Melina felt the last sliver of hope retreating like a tide. Without thinking, she lunged for the gate again, desperation amplifying her strength. With one final grunt, she heaved against the gate, and it creaked open, just a crack wide enough for them to slip through. The pure expanse of night lay on the other side, offering the intoxicating promise of freedom, but also a stark realization that their troubles were merely beginning. "Go!" she urged, shoving Stella through first before following. James hesitated for a moment, a final glance back to the night of horrors they fled. "What's next?" he gasped, as they stumbled onto the street under a sky blackened with clouds. Just then, the attic window shattered, glass raining down upon them, and a shriek pierced the night, sharp and filled with terror. "Run!" Melina screamed, fear clawing at her throat as the shadows themselves surged forth into the darkness. "What if it's waiting for us?" James shouted back as they sprinted ahead, their breaths hot and frantic in the cold air. But each step carried them further from the miasma of fear. They only had to keep running. Keep moving, yet, in the back of her mind, a seed of dread had taken root, a chilling realization that perhaps a much larger game was unfolding. What if the shadows had only just begun to play? The night pressed heavily on them as Melina, Stella, and James raced away from the mansion, leaving behind the haunting shadows clawing at the gates of their sanity. The chill in the air mirrored the fear slithering through Melina's veins. They sprinted down the uneven pavement, hearts pounding with the echo of what they narrowly escaped, but as they turned the corner, exhaustion clawed at their bodies, and Melina's momentum faltered. "Where to now?" she gasped, eyes darting around for any sign of civilization. "Keep moving," James urged, his voice taut with urgency. He glanced over his shoulder, half-knit brow carrying the weight of dread. "What if it's coming after us?" Stella's small hand trembled in Melina's grasp, but she squeezed back, willing her courage to wrap around the girl like a shield. "We're safe, sweetheart. We made it out." But even as she spoke, uncertainty gnawed at her. Just then, the night shattered like glass, cries echoed in the distance, desperate and haunting. Melina pressed forward, chasing the sounds, propelled by an instinct stronger than fear. Her brain raced. Were the others still trapped in the mansion? Should they have gone back? As they stumbled into town, the silent streets stretched out like a limbo, eerily still, their blood pounding loud against the silence. Panic swirled within, urging them both to run and to reveal their truth. The night pressed down, but then a flicker of life caught her eye. A diner glowed invitingly, its light spilling warmth into the night. "Over there!" Melina exclaimed, adrenaline surging anew. The three of them dashed towards the diner, the heavy door swinging open to the jingle of a bell, and they burst inside. The aromatic scent of coffee enveloped them, knitting their frayed spirits slightly back together. the diner's haze of chatter and clinking dishes felt like a refuge, but faint shadows still curled behind the edges of Melina's mind. They settled into a booth, adrenaline giving way to the weight of reality pressing down with relentless strength. Are we safe? Stella whispered, eyes wide as she surveyed the comforting chaos around them. James ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. For now. We can't linger here forever. We have to figure out what to do next. His gaze wandered to Melina, a flicker of gratitude igniting. Thank you for saving her. Melina managed a weak smile, but beneath it, dread bubbled. We came together. We need to face whatever's next together. But as their hearts settled, urgency still gnawed at her mind. We have to go back. We can't abandon the others. A silence draped over them, rippling beneath the tiles. Stella's small whimper sliced through the tension. But what if it doesn't let them go? What if we're too late? The innocent fear brought a tightening in Melina's chest, a pang that echoed back to the mansion, back to the horrors they could not forget. James leaned in, voice earnest but heavy. We need allies. If something is happening there, we can't uncover it alone. We need to warn people, get local authorities involved. Melina hesitated, torn. But the reality of the situation plunged into her thoughts like ice. Then it settled. We'll get help, and we'll go back to save them. Resolute, they left the diner, stepping into the deep chill that had awaited them. Streetlights flickered like ghosts, and as they moved through the darkened streets, Melina held on to her resolve like a lifeline. There was more than just fear propelling her forward. Beneath it all, she sensed the rumble of something powerful, an urge to uncover the truth whatever it took. The first rays of dawn began to filter through the night, blending shades of gold with the remnants of darkness as they reached the local police station. Clara, a sturdy figure in uniform, looked up as Melina rushed in, eyes gleaming with determination. We need help, she said, urgency clawing at her words. There are children, a family there still in that mansion. Take a deep breath, Ma, Clara said, leaning forward, her brows creasing with concern. Let us start from the beginning. And as Melina recounted the horrors, every heartbeat echoed a remembrance of the fears they had faced. They were no longer just fleeing shadows. Their destinies had intertwined with those unforgotten cries, a promise to return and confront whatever lay within the depths of that mansion. Returning to the house would mean facing the darkness they had tried to escape, but at that moment, Melina felt an overwhelming rush of fierce courage blossoming inside her. It was more than terror, it was resolve, and now, they were no longer on the sidelines, they were on a mission. Armored with the fresh light of dawn and the strength of unity, they would confront the shadows lurking within. Melina held firmly onto Stella's small hand, ready to face the unknown together. This was just the beginning, and they would not falter again. Before you go, it's crucial that you show your support. You need to subscribe immediately so you don't miss the next exclusive stories we have in store. Smash that like button now to help with the algorithm. Every click counts. I want to hear from you. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this jaw-dropping ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support.